Part 2, Chapter 32. Treadon Nelson. Treadon stepped onto campus Monday morning, feeling strange. He'd been cleared health-wise Sunday evening. No concussion, no paralysis. The doctors said he was lucky. The helmet hit close to his spine, but the main impact missed by a centimeter. He escaped with whiplash and a large bruise. They'd warned him to come back if he felt any nausea or dizziness. The truth was, he felt both, but he wanted to be at school today, wanted to tell Ellie there had to be another way. As bad as losing the football game should have hurt, wanting to be with Ellie was more raw, real, than anything that had to do with football. The usual crowd of students flowed onto campus. He felt bumps and shoves as people moved past him. He was moving too slow, feeling like he was in a fog. He received a few intentional pats on the back. Bad luck. Sorry about the loss. Last year. Bummer. The pep rally banners on the wall inside his first class seemed to know they had lost the game. The top corner had come loose and flopped over some of the letters. The poster read, "Odd luck, Wildcats." The only thing that had pulled him out of bed this morning was wanting to see Ellie. He slumped into his desk. Mr. Ashcroft walked in with a pile of graded papers in his hand. Treadon closed his eyes, not sure he could handle the gloating that was sure to come. A piece of paper slid onto his desk as he studied the wood grain. There was a grade marked at the top in red pen, a capital B, followed by a plus sign. Mr. Ashcroft stood next to his desk. Treadon looked up in resignation, waiting for the jibes about the loss, about the pointless purpose of sports, and the damaging egos it gave people. That wasn't the message Treadon read on Mr. Ashcroft's face. There was no contempt, none of his usual disdain. He shuffled the papers nervously. "Sorry about the game." Mr. Ashcroft's nasally voice was offset with a tone of humility. "You didn't deserve that ending. You worked hard. Not all of them do." Worked hard? For what? What was a grade on a math test? What was a win in a football game? Things that should be important, that had always been important, seemed insignificant next to his pull to be with Ellie, to be part of something bigger. The morning dragged by, but when lunch finally came, he skipped the food line and went straight to the table. He imagined what he would say if Ellie tried to ignore him, if she kept her head turned away and pretended he didn't exist, if he could only explain that he didn't care about another guardian. He didn't care if she didn't have all of herself to give him. He didn't need that. She could be who she was, and he could be a part of that. Whatever she needed to be. Treadon stopped as he approached the table. Ellie wasn't beside Megan. The skaters were eating together, glancing at Ellie's seat. Jaren and Rachel came over and found their chairs. The one Ellie usually sat in stayed empty. Treadon squeezed in on the far side of Megan. He leaned over to talk to Jaren, but spoke loud enough for everyone to know they were included in the question. "Have you seen Ellie?" Several heads shook in the negative. "She's probably going out of her way to avoid you." Jaren bit 4 fries in half. "I mean, she did tell you she wasn't interested last week." "I know, but she should still be at school, even if she's avoiding me." The dizziness increased, and he had trouble focusing on the conversation around him. The nausea was bad enough that he thought he might throw up. Rachel and Jaren were in their own world. Treadon could tell that Jaren had filled Rachel in on the office, the ruined servers, his father's rejection. The mystery behind XC Energy was important, but Treadon couldn't seem to get himself to care. Ellie wasn't here. That was priority number 1. Megan turned toward him. She had a new blue streak in her hair that brought out the light in her eyes. She watched him expectantly, not saying anything. "Do you know where she is?" Treadon asked her. "No," Megan said in a flat voice. "I only know where she isn't." Treadon leaned back. "What's that supposed to mean?" "A lot of our understanding about life comes from what is absent, especially when that thing is usually present. Then an absence feels physical. Absence feels as real as a presence." Treadon could only nod. Ellie's absence felt physical at this table, like everyone was avoiding looking at something because it wasn't there, and it should be. She should be there. "She'll be back." Treadon said the words for himself because he couldn't imagine a permanent hole. "It's possible." Megan's tone implied the opposite. She must have seen the distressed look on Treadon's face. "Ellie helped me see that life is full of better tomorrows. We're never really alone." Treadon felt a flash of anger and slammed his fists on the table, rattling lunch trays. You're saying that like she's already gone. Megan stared at him, her face unreadable. Because she's just home with a cold. Treadon stood up, pulling the table and everyone sitting on it 3 feet to the side. He didn't know if Megan understood what she was saying, that a descendant of Angel wouldn't get sick with a cold when she could heal broken bones and wipe away wounds. Somehow, Megan understood that if Ellie wasn't here, something was wrong, and she stared at him like she expected him to do something about it. He remembered her words to him a few days before. She needs someone. I'm just not sure it's you. Treadon turned and pushed away from the table, fighting his way across the lunchroom, barely making it to the men's bathroom before he puked in the toilet, the nausea and dizziness coming to a head as he thought of the possibilities. Ellie was missing. After all her fear, hiding, secrets, and finally learning to trust him, she couldn't be gone. He stumbled to the sink, washed his hands, and splashed cold water on his face. He leaned against the porcelain basin to try and clear his head. The door opened, and when Treadon looked in the mirror, he saw Jaren leaning casually against the wall. "What are you doing here?" Treadon asked, his voice scratchy. "You ditched me at lunch. I was going to give you a swirly, but it looks like you already took care of that." Treadon shook his head. "I didn't give myself a swirly." "Seriously, man, do you need to go back to the hospital?" Treadon shook his head. They couldn't help him at the hospital. He needed to find Ellie. "I need a favor. Can you give me a ride?"